We are continuing to track SNC-Lavalin this morning. The company's stock hitting a 14-year low as it plans an overhaul of its business. And of course, yesterday we told you that its shareholder, the case to depot, blasted the engineering firm's, quote, unacceptable trend and called for decisive and timely action. We want to talk to another investor right now. David Taylor is President and Chief Investment Officer of Taylor Asset Management, and he joins us here in studio. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
For those who might not be familiar with you as an investor, how long have you been an investor in SNC?
Too long. I would say probably about 2 years now.
2 years.
Yep.
And so I guess over the last 24 hours, we've seen the company announce a major restructuring of how their business is run. That prompted this response from the case, which up until now seemed to be quite supportive of the business. What do you make of what SNC has put forward?
Well, I think it's the right thing to do. To separate the good business from the bad business, there obviously is a strong business, Atkins, on the engineering design business that is not properly being reflected in the stock price. And the bad business, the turnkey fixed cost contracts, have deteriorated not only the company, but deteriorated the balance sheet and has affected the good business. So I totally understand the strategy. What I find most shocking is that the bad business continues to get worse and there doesn't seem to be a floor. It just continuously gets, the estimates get revised lower and lower and lower. And I'm not sure how that's happened. I mean, this will now be the fourth revision to 2019 estimates that we've had so far this year.
What would be your best guess as to why it's happening? We've alluded to some of these fixed price contracts they had where you get to the end of the road and there seems to be some kind of dispute with the client.
No, I think what's happened is it's a competitive market, and I think the market has shifted from the power, the leverage from the engineering construction companies to the client. And if you want to get in the game and you want to bid on these projects, you've got to take significant risks and take significant liabilities. And I suspect SNC has taken on, or they don't know how to structure the contracts, they don't know how to price the contracts, and they've taken on significant liabilities. And the client hasn't, and it's nothing simpler than that.
Do you think, I mean, the fact that they've had to revise their numbers frequently, there have been some analysts who have said they could have done a better job of communicating to us. You were going to say something.
No, I was just laughing. I mean, the company couldn't have done a worse messaging strategy. As I say, they've revised lower 4 times, and the analyst community, the investment community has completely lost confidence, clearly in the management team, clearly in the board, in the investor relations department. This company needs a major overhaul. I mean, it's not just about changing the executive suite, it's about changing this board. This board should have asked the tough questions, and if they weren't getting the right answers from management, they should have resigned. Individuals should have resigned. So I don't frankly understand how this company could have put out a guidance, a $900 million EBITDA guidance for 2019, and stated the reason why the numbers were going to improve in the second half was because a number of their fixed price contracts they're going to get recaptures and they're going to get money back from these contracts because they under budgeted, so they're going to get money back. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. They literally just took down massive write-downs like just a month later. So I commend the case for coming out publicly and chastising the management team, but go back and look at the last annual meeting. I believe the board got a 96 or 95% approval rating. So where was the case then? I mean, this hasn't just happened in the last week. I mean, this mismanagement and I mean, we should be upset over the fact they just wrote down Kent's, their oil and gas acquisition. They just wrote down $4 billion in assets. Yeah. I mean, where was the case? Where was the board? Why weren't they asking the tough questions when they bought that division when oil was at $90?
Well, do you think it's possible, because we saw that tone from the case and we said in our newsroom, this is different language than what we've heard from them in the past.
As it should be.
Do you think it's, in this particular instance, maybe they should have been more informed of what might be coming? Maybe that changed the tone?
We'll never know what happened behind the scenes, right? We won't know. Maybe they were informed. Maybe they were duped just like the board was duped. And so who knows? I have no idea. Look, I'm happy they spoke out. I'm happy they're upset. Shareholders should be upset. There is significant value. This transformation should have happened a lot sooner. And I just don't understand how management can come up and revise guidance 4 times in 6 months, and not one board member stood up and said, I'm not getting the data I need to make a proper assessment, and I'm out of here. I think they should all. We've gone through this with Element. We've gone through this with Home Capital. There's a complete lack of confidence and trust in this company, and you've got a completely clean house. You want investors to come back, and you want them to put a 9 or 10 times multiple on your good business. Well, then you got to change from top to bottom. It's just not going to happen. People don't trust this board. They don't trust the management. You have to completely clean house.
What would spark that outside of? We talked about the stock being at a 14-year low. Take the case, for example. Could you envision them taking a much more activist role
I suspect they are right now. The mere fact that they came out publicly with this statement I suspect they are taking a far more active role. And it's this kind of event, this massive frustration and clearly underperformance, I suspect will spark action. I mean, look, we tried reaching out to the case and other large shareholders, and nobody had any interest in talking to us. So, it just doesn't happen in Canada. I mean, you've got these passive shareholders in Canada that just seem to trust the board and willing to just ride along with a loser and not take action. But I say, to go back and look at what happened at Element, look at what happened at Home, and those stocks have recovered significantly. They're up 1, 2, 3, 400%. And you had to change the entire culture and change the board. Like, if people talk about defrauding Libya, I mean, this company, I think, defrauded shareholders.
So just to be clear, when you reached out to the case, can you tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, they didn't return. They didn't have it.
When was that?
No, I don't know, a month ago, 6 months ago, and a year ago, and a year and a half ago. And look, they don't need us. I mean, they're 20% shareholders. They don't need us. But in the U.S., shareholders get together all the time, and they bounce ideas off each other, and they talk about their frustration, things that can be done. And to me, this is a classic example. I mean, I'm glad the moves are taking place. I believe in the value of this company, there's no question, but I don't believe that investors or analysts will jump on this company and strongly recommend it and feel comfortable buying it unless we see wholesale changes. I really believe that.
But just to be clear here, it would be fair to say that there have been activist discussions amongst shareholders in recent months.
I would say there have been certainly attempts to reach out to other shareholders to talk about things that can be done, and there's been a complete inactivity. At the end of the day, if I own 20% of the company and some shareholder that owned 4 or 5% called me, I'd say, well, what do I need you for? I already own 20%. I've got full access to the board. I don't need anybody. So I suspect they didn't need us. They didn't need other shareholders. But in hindsight, maybe they did.
So if I can tie this back to what ultimately the business does and how things could be complicated by the Ottawa connection to this story, because obviously we've talked a lot about what was happening behind the scenes with the corruption charges, and now looks a lot more like trial is the reality for the business. But during that, and when the Prime Minister was the spotlight was on him, there was this constant dialogue around jobs, SNC jobs. Now, if they're looking to make some dramatic changes, one would assume there's some tough choices that have to be made on that front as well.
Certainly.
How does the company, facing pressure from shareholders like yourself and also knowing what the political pressure might be, balance all of that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how they're going to balance it, but clearly, look, when we take a look at what's going on with the charges and the deferred prosecution agreement, or the lack of deferred prosecution agreement, the good news is, amongst all this, is that the company isn't going to be bidding on federal projects anymore because they've gotten out of this business. It's going to be more on the consultation business. And I don't know how much of that business really is done in Canada. So look at all the businesses that had significant exposure to bidding on public projects within Canada, I suspect are being written down or sold. So I don't know if it's going to have a significant impact. At the end of the day, look, the real value is going to be in this engineering design management division, number one, the Atkins business, the nuclear business, and the remaining stub in the 407. And you have to ask yourself whether you want to put on the consulting business, you want to put a 5 times, a 6 times, an 8 times, or a 10 times multiple. That's it. It comes in. And if you put a 6 times multiple, it's worth 30. If you put a proper 10 times multiple, it's worth 50. So that's it. You have to decide what multiple you want to put on it. Nothing else matters. Really, nothing else matters. You have to decide what multiple you want to put. And the multiple you're going to put on that is going to be a function of the confidence that you have in the management of that, the ability to grow, the ability for it to separate itself from all the other noise with this SNC, and the ability of this board to do the right thing. Nothing else matters.
And just for disclosure before you go, as an investor, you kind of told us how long you have been invested.
It probably wasn't 2 years. It was probably a year. We bought it sort of in the low 40s after they revised guidance for the second time. The stock fell about 30%. And so we came in after that, and we own. It's probably about 5% of the funds we run. It's 5%. So we've got 25 names. It's one of 25 names.
In terms of your commitment to the company, given everything that's going on.
Emotionally, high. So we don't have to say how many shares we own, but we consider it's a significant position in our portfolio.
But in terms of staying committed as an investor.
Oh, I'm definitely committed. We buy low and we sell high. And I've been through this before. This one's exceptionally frustrating, but I've gone through this for 35 years. I've gone through a number of these, and there is inherent value in this company if it's run properly. Yeah. And this would definitely not be the time to sell. Although, I probably said that 20% ago. But to me, I believe it feels like this is the bottom if they do the right thing here.
David, good to get your perspective as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
David Taylor, President and Chief Investment Officer at Taylor Asset Management with the latest on SNC.